how are we doing, everyone? Can you guys hear me all right? There's going to be a fair delay when you guys do answer that. I think it's like 10-15 seconds that the stream's coming after. So if I take a while to respond, that'll be all right. Beautiful. Cheers, Dylan. All right, so what we'll do is we'll kick off. Hope you guys are all going well. So I thought I'd start. I'm just going to see, like, I actually haven't gone below the 4 hour on the time frames today. I like to sort of do things live because that way you guys see exactly how I think. I'm not going and finding setups and going, oh yeah, you know, there's setups here. You sort of see the whole process, which I think some people find really useful. I certainly find it useful when I watch people do the whole process. So I thought I'd start with sort of an update on my video from Monday. So on Monday, I was talking about a bounce off this demand zone. You can see that came beautifully there. So I didn't actually take this as a trade. For me, it was sort of a pretty high risk trade. You're going long in a pretty solid bear market on the 4 hours at least. Market structure is pretty bearish. So not a trade that I'm actually in, but you can see it's playing out pretty nicely. And I'm sort of looking at this level up here as a potential next lower high. Still don't know if I'll take that short. I probably will. Looking at it, like, that's an extreme risk to reward. So even if I stagger in something like this, use that 4 hour EQ and that demand zone, I'd do it for probably like 0.25 risk. I wouldn't put a whole 1% on it, because I don't feel like that's a strong supply zone. I might just call that a demand zone, but yeah, don't feel like it's that strong of a supply zone. But at 7.27 to 1, I'm pretty happy to take my chances for a low risk trade. So I haven't got orders in yet, but I will potentially end up taking that trade. I've said Monday that I probably wouldn't touch it, but I always get sucked in by the fat risk to reward. So there is a good chance that I will. That said, what I'm actually going to do here is sort of have a look for some scalp trades. So when I scalp, one thing that I like to do is get a high time frame bias. And what I mean by that is probably a 4 hour bias. If I'm looking at the 15 minutes, I use the 4 hours for my bias. If I'm looking at the 1 minute, I'd probably use the 15 minutes for my bias. But sort of in the same way that with my 4 hour trading, I use the daily time frame to get a bias. I just go, you know, to a higher time frame to get a big picture idea of what the market's doing, and then try and trade in that direction. So like I just said, like, my current 4 hour bias is actually bearish. Even though we're sort of pushing up from here, I sort of look at market structure, you know, in terms of the pivot. So we're going there, something like that, something like that, something like that. So until we break this high, or if we do sort of come up here, form a high there, and then go and break that, my 4 hour bias is going to stay bearish. So right now, if I'm going to scalp the 15 minutes, then my bias is going to be to the downside. So then I pretty much just do the same thing that I do. Like, my strategy doesn't really change based on the time frame I'm trading. It really is the same strategy, just applied on a smaller time frame. So what I'll do is I'll get rid of this, sort of clean the chart up a little bit. And if you want to see why I've got the levels marked in that I do, don't know what happened there. If you want to see why I've got the levels marked in that I do, then the video I posted Monday explains all of them, I'm pretty sure. I might have added some yesterday, but if I did, they'll be pretty minor. So I now come down to the 15-minute time frame. And so to me, there is a supply zone there, which actually lines up really nicely with that 4 hour 61.8. So I could potentially take a 15-minute trade off that. There'd also be a demand zone here. And so the only trade that I'd really be looking at here, if my bias is to the downside, is probably something like this. Target that demand zone. I'd probably stagger out. So, you know, you're getting some, and there might, well, there'll probably be, if we do push up from here. So I'm looking at something like this happening. But if we do push up from where we are, then it would require the formation of a demand zone sort of through there, right? So then I'd probably target that as my first target. Down here is my second, and down there is my third. So at the moment, I look at the market and go, right, no trades here. If you trade a different strategy, if you're a breakout trader or something, even then, I don't see a whole lot. There's potentially a trend there, but it's super steep. I wouldn't be trading that. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me at the moment. So there's not likely to be a scalp on Bitcoin while we're on this session. If we were to go down to the 1 minute, so on the 1 minute, my time frame bias would actually be bullish, I reckon. So if I'm looking at 15-minute market structure for my bias, I'm looking at sort of this action. We have just made a lower low. Let's see what we can find on the 1 minutes. I think I've only ever traded the 1 minute when I'm testing certain things. I've never actually used it to trade off. We're almost ranging a little bit, so you could potentially get in on some of this action, but not for me. So yeah, really the only trade I'll be looking at is that 15-minute one. Don't have orders in for it currently, but I don't mind the look at that actually. It's a huge risk to reward, which I'm always a really big fan of. And that's, like I said on my call Monday, looking at sort of the market as is, I don't see a whole lot, except for sort of that short from up here I was just talking about before. And so I like having different options. I like having the ability to go and scalp. I like having my 15-minute fib strategy, which you could actually use right now, right? So 15-minute fibs, for those who don't know, essentially looks for changes in market structure, which you'd have sort of at the break of this low, which we've just had, break of that low, run fibs on it, and then just stagger in from the 50 and the 61.8. So you would be looking at something like this. In fact, we'll leave that up because that might happen as we're live. We'll see what happens. But in terms of Bitcoin, that's pretty much all I'm seeing at the moment. I'm not going to trade the 15-minute fibs. I haven't used that strategy in maybe a month. But it is another strategy I have that, you know, has been profitable for me. So it's definitely the option there. Anyone got any charts they want me to look at? Any questions they want to ask? What I'll do, because of that delay, I'll have a look at the DXY, because I do really like to keep an eye on the DXY. So to me, it's been on a tear, right? The DXY has been super bullish, but there is a really strong level that we're coming up to, this monthly level at about the 96. So I'm pretty interested to see what happens there. Do we keep pushing? Even above that, there's a weekly resistance level, so it'll be interesting to see what happens up there. But it's sort of got pretty big impacts on trading, right? As an Australian, most of my spending is in AUD, and so I hedged to USD a little while ago because I really liked the look of it and I didn't like the look of the AUD, and that's been pretty good to me. But you know, at some point you have to cash back into AUD, and so I am always keeping an eye on the DXY to just see what's going on there. If I think it's starting to turn bearish, then it's a good time for me to get back across to AUD, realize some of those profits from switching over. It's also got a bit of an impact on Bitcoin. It's sort of lessened. They were, you know, almost perfectly inversely correlated for a while, but now they're still, I mean, you'll see if you look at that time period when the DXY ran, so we're looking at sort of the 29th of October till 25th of November. So October to November, I think Bitcoin was actually doing pretty well in that time. So 29th of October, about here until, well, we're looking at the 25th of November, I think it was. So, you know, not a huge correlation there. Bitcoin sort of just went sideways as the DXY went like massively to the upside. But certainly for the impact on the AUD, it's worth keeping an eye on the DXY, and especially the AUD-USD pair. I actually posted in would have been the Forex channel, the Forex charts on Monday morning, literally on this candle, that bullish engulfing, talking about how I was looking at cashing some of that USD back into AUD because we're at a pretty strong level. I'd sort of, you know, made some decent gains on the AUD, and so it was sort of time to start realizing that. And if you, well, I'm never giving financial advice, but I, you know, the AUD is up nearly 5% since I said that, so not a bad gain, better than bank interest, and in the course of what, 2 days. But yeah, anyone got any questions, any pairs they want charted up, just let me know. Drop it in the YouTube channel, in the YouTube comment section. Otherwise, that's pretty much all I wanted to look at, is sort of just what Bitcoin's doing, and then open it up to a bit of a Q&A session. So the Euro, that's another one that I like to trade. That's played out really nicely. That's sort of short from this supply zone. It's looking good. What else? This delay is going to kill me, because I ask a question and then I won't actually, you guys won't see it for about 20 seconds. So it's hard to know if anyone's answered. I don't just want to sit silent the whole time. I'll keep fidgeting while I wait. Bear with me, because this is my first YouTube live stream, so there will probably be some, I mean, touch wood, there's been no technical difficulties so far, but you know, maybe some human error as we just sort of figure out how things work. So gold, this is not something that I'm currently trading. So I do love Forex, right? I especially, like I said, with not being able to trade or not seeing really any trades on Bitcoin for the week, I love having Forex as another option, something else to do when the crypto market's not suiting me. That's a huge thing, right? I'm a big believer in only trading when the market is the market that works for you, right? So there's markets that I suck at, ranging markets. Timmy Cotter, I will get to that in a sec. Beautiful, thanks for the input. Yeah, so ranging markets are something that I'm not bad at trading them, but I suck at identifying them, right? I will watch a ranging market, and I'll watch it. So let's just say price was ranging between these two levels. I'll watch it do it like 4 times, and each time, like when price is here, I'm like, all right, good chance it's going to break and we'll keep going down. Then it's up here, I'm like, good chance it's going to break up, we'll keep going down. Good chance it's going to break down, we'll keep going down. And then after like the 6th time, I'm like, oh, we're in a ranging market. And so then I'll think about trading a ranging market, and that's when it breaks down. So like, my strategy works well in ranging markets, but they're not something I'm good at trading. I'm much more of a trending market trader. So yeah, like I love having Forex, because if Bitcoin is not suiting me, and Bitcoin's pretty much the only thing I do trade in crypto, if Bitcoin's not suiting me, I can go to Forex, I can trade some things there. I don't really trade stocks, but I like to chart them just to sort of keep me active. So what we'll do is we will go have a look at GBPAUD, which is not one of the Forex charts. GBPAUD. It's not one of the pairs that I don't think I even chart it, to be honest. So I'll just run you through my entire charting process. Now that, I'm wondering whether that's an OEND glitch or that was just some insane price action. So let's have a look at the Forex. Yeah, so it looks like an OEND glitch there. Alright, so what I'm seeing on the weekly currently is we've got a demand zone there. And I was going to say this looks similar to the DXY, but of course it does, because it's against the USD. Oh no, we're looking at the AUD pair. Alright, that's interesting. That is interesting. So then there's also there's a solid weekly level through there. Just based off, you know, that, even that wick down, price held here, price held there, and sort of held here. So I definitely consider that a pretty solid level. Definitely an area of interest. Coming down to the dailies. CRVUSDT, no worries, Antho HD. I'll get to that when I'm done with this bad boy. So there's currently a daily supply zone up there. And there's a demand zone through there. So this is where things get interesting. Alright, so that demand zone lines up beautifully with the 50 fib. There is also a decent daily level through there. What are we seeing on the 4 hour? So on the 4 hour, there'd be a demand zone there. We've sort of eaten that, so I wouldn't be too confident in that level continuing to hold. So yeah, there's a really solid 4 hour EQ through there. Look, that's a pretty harsh sell-off. That is a pretty harsh sell-off. So, you know, I'd expect a recovery at some point, but the fact that we've eaten that zone sort of makes me think it's less likely to come right now. I don't see that as super likely, like just falling straight down to that daily level. There's also a 4 hour level sort of within that, or, you know, at the end of it. So what do I reckon? There's another EQ up there. If I had to hazard a guess, I feel like it's due for a bounce. I almost feel like something like that. But it definitely could. The fact that we've eaten that zone, right? I mean, there's a tiny bit at the bottom untouched, but I wouldn't be putting too much faith in that. Definitely could come down here and start sort of finding buyers down there. But I would be surprised to see this zone just get smashed, just because that was a pretty solid consolidation. We really boosted up out of it. That daily fib lines up like we found before. So potentially see a bounce from there, I think would be, I don't like to say unlikely, but I think it'd be more likely we'd bounce from there than just eat that zone. But one big thing to remember is I am really not a fundamentals guy, right? One of my favorite things about trading, and especially technical analysis, is that I don't have to read up on fundamentals. My brother he's been reading maybe not white papers, but you know, earnings reports and things with stocks since he was like 15, right? Loves knowing the ins and outs of a company. I couldn't think of anything worse. I don't want to have to read financial reports, but the fact that I can literally just draw some lines on a chart and make money off that, I think is the best thing ever. And that definitely does catch me out sometimes. You know, like with the recent Bitcoin crash. Excuse me. With the recent Bitcoin crash, a lot of people are attributing it to Evergrande. Definitely could be. You know, I'm not saying it's not, but I just don't bother looking into that stuff. And I do pretty well off pure TA, and it just suits my lifestyle more, makes me happier not to have to read that sort of stuff. So, you know, while I do think that there's a good chance that we're going to have a bounce off here, I've got no idea if Britain's having Brexit 2.0 and Australia's just discovered, I don't know, some mad gold mine or anything like that. So, you know, if there is a really big fundamental reason for the AUD to be pumping, especially against the GBP, then I'm not going to know it. But I'm a big believer in the charts end up showing it, right? You'll see price react pretty quick to big fundamental news, and so then you start seeing things happen on the chart. So I might be slow to see those things, but I'm also a big believer in often you don't have the information as quickly as you think. People think that when they read news articles, they're up to date, they're getting the information early, but I would almost always bet the big players have known that stuff for a while. And so, yeah, you might be getting in before, you know, your mum and dad investors, but your information edge is not as big as I think a lot of people think it is. That's my personal opinion. That's also, but I also probably just try and justify why I ignore fundamentals. So that could be part of it. But yeah, that's what I'm seeing on the GBP at the moment. So bounce from this level, I think, good chance. And you get a pretty massive risk to reward off that if you're staggering off those two levels. I'd probably put my stop, I'd probably put my stop just a little bit below that daily level. But even if you're just targeting there, that's still a 3-1. And then if we do keep launching up to that next daily level, that's a pretty solid trade. So the next one that we were going to do was CRVUSDT. Yeah, see, that's so Johnny is spot on. Like price being factored in, markets are forward thinking. So, you know, unless you're hearing the information super, super early, the information's probably already very, 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 very Is this the right one? Where was I looking? So level CRVUSDT. Yeah, sweet. So if you want a time frame that's not the 4 hour, just let me know. If you want to see what it's doing, if you want me to analyze a chart on the 1 minute, then I can do that for sure. Otherwise, I'm just going to always default to the 4 hour. So this is not a level that I'd put a whole lot of faith in, right? We've only had the one close up there and sort of the wick, but it's the information we've got to work with at the moment. Bit of a level there, and a weekly demand there. So like, price is nowhere near that level, but I always still just like to mark it off. I really like having a big picture view of what I think the market's going to do. So then daily level there, daily supply zone. So you look at that, that's a beautiful touch off this demand zone, right? Based on that candle, and then the fact that we retested it here, I really like the look of that demand zone. And you can see when price tanked, which would have been Bitcoin's crash on Sunday, whenever that was, that was a level that held us up. So you can see, I'm a huge fan of supply and demand zones. I really, really back them, and you can see why, right? Perfect touch off that zone. There's also, no, it's probably a 4 hour zone actually. The next one that I'm going to see. So I'd put a zone through there. Again, not one that I would put a ton of faith in. To me, that's the real zone, this one up here, because that's the pivot. This one's more of a pause, like price just sort of held up here, and then that was the zone that led to the break. Let me get rid of some of that mess. So I'm always looking for breaks in market structure with my zones. So this zone is the one that actually led to that break of that level. But this zone up here is sort of where that move really originated from. So both those I consider valid supply zones, but that upper one is the one that I'd expect to hold stronger. There's what I call a pause zone, which is sort of like a weak zone there. So are we potentially going to get held up in a sec? Well, we definitely might. So, 61.8 lines up in there. The important thing to remember when you're trading USDT pairs is they're always going to mimic Bitcoin, especially in big moves on Bitcoin, but Bitcoin gives them their USD value. And so if you look at this chart and the Bitcoin chart, they're going to look very, very similar, right? You can see big sell-off, little sort of horseshoe recovery, and then we pushed up from there. So CRVUSDT. So you always really want to be paying attention to what Bitcoin's doing, and it's a huge, I guess, beginner mistake to go and open 20 different positions on USD pairs, and then when Bitcoin tanks, they get absolutely smashed, and they're not sure why. I see a lot of people that are like, oh, all the coins look the same at the moment. It's like, well, yeah, because you're charting USDT pairs. Like, they all just look like Bitcoin. They've always got their own flair. Like, that demand level that I marked off on Bitcoin, this one sort of ate it. But they're always very, very similar to Bitcoin, with a few exceptions, when CRO's pumping and those sorts of things. So what I'm currently seeing, I don't know anything about CRV in terms of fundamentals. So, if they've just had, or they've got some airdrop or something, definitely could keep pumping. But a rejection from this level does make sense to me. If Bitcoin keeps pushing up, then it definitely could get up to this level. But the fact that you got a pretty strong 4 hour level through there, as well as a 61.8, as well as this, again, like I consider that sort of a weaker zone because it's a pause zone. I'll redo my supply and demand video because it's old, it just doesn't look that good, and two, there's a lot more information that I should really flesh out in it. But yeah, I would lean towards seeing something like that on CRV for the next sort of week or two. Alright, where are we at? So that was that. Can you give your thoughts on ETH when you get the time? For sure I can. So I'm going to assume that you want ETH BTC. I'll do both, the USD and the BTC pair, but I always like to chart, especially ETH, against, I pretty much chart all my alts against BTC first, and then when I do think about the USD, then I'll go and look at that. But I like to know what they're doing against Bitcoin beforehand. So I'm pretty bullish on ETH against Bitcoin, not necessarily against the USD, but the fact that we've eaten this weekly zone. So I've been watching this zone for ages, you know, since I think that was the zone I had marked out originally. We broke that, so I've been watching it for a couple of months. The fact that we've eaten through that, that's pretty bullish for ETH. So the next zone would be right up here. Now it's super wide, but you know, the only level that really matters on these zones is the bottom, unless you're using it for your stop loss. It just sort of helps you get targets. So that's the next level I'll be targeting. Is there any sort of daily levels? There's a little bit of an EQ through there. Nothing that I'd put tons of faith in. ETH just doesn't have much history up here because it hasn't spent much time that high up. But the fact that you've got that daily level as well as a daily supply zone would make me think there's a good chance that that will act as resistance. We won't bother looking for 4 hour zones in there because we'll be scrolling back for ages to find it. So on the daily, we've got that going on, which all makes sense. So we've broken this high, so that's bullish. So sorry, when I say this high, I'm sort of looking at this. I mean these are, you know, it's been a pretty strong resistance level, and you can see we've flipped it. It's now acted as support, and we've pushed off. So that all makes me think ETH is, you know, more likely to head up to this 0.1 level than to head back down to 0.5 sort of thing. Doesn't mean we won't go down in the short term. As you can see, you know, I was expecting price to come down here, sort of gather some buying strength, and then bounce. And to be honest, looking at it, I still feel that way. This sort of looks like it's weakened off a little bit. If you go down to like the 1 hours, you've probably got like a ascending wedge or something. No, it's just a bit of a channel really, but it sort of feels, what do we got there? I'm trying to remember what I've got that alert set for. I think that was my FTX. Well, it was definitely FTX because it's BTC perp. Yeah, looking at this, like you can see we had a really strong push up here, and then we're sort of struggling to find a whole lot of buyers. We're not going down either, but it wouldn't surprise me to see Bitcoin sort of come back down, find buying support, because I would expect there to be buying support through here. In fact, that might be my level from 2 weeks ago. So if we look at this now, and there would be a, what I'd consider like not a super strong daily zone, but there would be a daily zone there. So yeah, I still think sort of coming down, retesting this trend line, because that's a pretty, what are we looking at? A month or two? 50 days, yeah, so a month and a half. It's a pretty strong trend line. It's held up well. 1, 2, 3, 4, so 4 touches or so. So yeah, I would think on the daily, I'm sort of on the higher time frames, I'm sort of expecting this to head up to here. And so based on what's happening at the moment, right, the fact that we've sort of slowed down, I would lean towards us coming down, finding buyer support, and then trying to move up to that sort of higher level. So that's why I always like to have my big picture view, right? Because I want to be thinking about, okay, on the daily, where do I think price is going? And if that's up here, then I go, all right, I want to get into a long, but do I want to buy right now? Not really. It's not looking super bullish. But if we get down here, I'd love to be buying because I'm going to get a huge risk to reward. Look at that, right? And my favorite thing about the way that I trade is it sort of constantly reinforces buy low, sell high. Because I'm never going, oh, price is here, I'm going to buy. I'm always going, all right, where's a price that I'm happy to do business, right? Where is a price when price will come down and I'll be buying low that I can get in and then I can try and sell high. I kind of consider it market structure trading. I'm always trying to buy higher lows and sell higher highs, or lower highs if I'm shorting. But I'm always trying to, you know, buy low, sell high. So that's sort of what I'm seeing on ETH BTC. ETH USD, I actually don't know the last time I charted this up. So I haven't been trading alts. I literally couldn't tell you. I mean, with Vema, I've been sort of testing alts, just for the sake of beta testing, you know, to be able to put more trades on. But in terms of my actual trade account, I haven't touched alts in, it might have been 6 months. It's probably been a while, right? Bitcoin just sort of makes sense to me. I do pretty well off it, and it's easy. If I can just do one chart and make money off that, it's so stress free. I'm not thinking about 10 different things, and especially with alts, having to consider the Bitcoin pair and then trade the USD pair, it's not something I like. I feel like I'm always considering 3 charts. I'm looking at Bitcoin USD, ETH BTC to trade ETH USD. So I need to consider 3 charts. Bitcoin USD, I don't even really consider the DXY anymore. I basically just look at Bitcoin and go, yeah, cool. I see this, that's what I'm going to do. So that's a big reason for me only trading Bitcoin. The other big reason is it's just where I had the most success. I cut out all alts except ETH when I realized that most of my losses were coming from them and most of my gains were coming from Bitcoin and ETH. And I'm not really sure why I cut out ETH. You know, it could just be pure laziness. There was no definite, I'm going to stop trading ETH. I just haven't taken a trade on it for ages. So, yeah, the last time I traded ETH USD, no idea. Long time ago. But, alright, so hang on, we're looking at the weekly. So this is something that I was talking to, I think it was Garth. I'm pretty sure Garth and I were talking about this yesterday. If it was someone else, then sorry about that. Oh, that didn't work. But there is a bit of a ascending wedge forming on the weeklies. Now, this is actually forming on Bitcoin as well, yeah, which makes sense that ETH would do it because of the USD pairing. But an ascending wedge is typically a bearish pattern. I can't remember the stats, but I think it's roughly like 2/3 of the time it'll break to the downside. So if I purely just look at the weekly, I almost expect to see something like that. Like another bounce off that wedge. I don't think we'll just come down and smash it. But then, you know, at some point, so we got 1, 2, 3, that's 4 touches. I'm not huge on the 5-touch rule, but to me what makes the most sense is, yeah, another cut, like come down, retest. There's also what I consider a pretty weak, there's probably a daily zone in there, but I wouldn't be, it is a weekly zone, but it's not one that I'd be too concerned with. There's probably a daily zone within it, we'll find it in a sec, but that would be sort of my big picture view of what I expect to happen on the weeklies. I shouldn't say expect, what I think is not even the most likely, but like I gotta read a dictionary. Gotta get some new words so I can really convey what I'm trying to say. But the sort of what I'd want to see happen for it to make sense with my trade style, I guess, is a really bad way of explaining it. But yeah, like if it's doing those things, then I'm like, yeah, that's moving in a way that makes sense to me. That's moving in a way that suits my style. If it's not, if it's just breaking to the upside and running and stuff, doesn't suit my style, not something I want to trade. So if we were doing that sort of ascending wedge, I'd be happy to trade it because it's moving in a way that makes sense to me. That gives me a high chance of making money off it. So on the dailies, this is what we're looking at. So there's a bit of a zone up here. That was way too wide. Let's zoom in a bit. There's a zone there, right? And that's how well, you know, we've pierced half of it. So it's definitely losing strength. There's also a zone here. In terms of patterns, I'm not really seeing anything. And then down to the 4 hour. Okay, so we are sort of, I'd almost consider this ranging. Interesting. So with the fibs, that's going to be, we've already broken the 61.8, I reckon. Yeah, there we go. So this is an interesting conundrum, right? Because I think the highest probability on Bitcoin is sort of that move up to the 61.8 and that supply zone and then a rejection. That I was talking about earlier. But because I'm bullish on ETH BTC, although I am sort of short-term bearish, long-term bullish. So if I think both of them are more likely to head down, so say ETH sits flat, Bitcoin heads up to here, that would cause ETH to move up as well. So we'd see something like that. Then if Bitcoin tanks and ETH doesn't tank but heads down to that that demand zone that I'm sort of looking at for the bounce, potentially see something like that. So that's sort of what I lean towards on ETHUSD, which, you know, it's pretty much exactly what I'm seeing on BTC. Although actually, because if the ETH BTC pair does go down the way that I think it might, this would actually fall a lot harder than Bitcoin. I'd sort of think it might recover once ETH bounces off this level, but on the way down, so if we're looking at, let's say, what's that, 7, so let's say 6.5% drop there, and this got my scalp in the way. Let's we haven't hit anything yet, but so on Bitcoin I'm looking at like 5% up and then 10% down. Then I would think for ETH/USD, so 5% up, yeah, so 5% up lines up really nicely with that zone, and then it was 10% down and 6.5% down, so that's like 16.5. Yeah, so even here, even just that demand zone. But again, that's a lot of ifs. This is why I don't like trading AUDUSD pairs. That's a lot of if Bitcoin does this, if ETH/BTC does that, and because the way that I trade is, it's already got two big ifs, right? So I'm always looking at if price gets up here, then I'll short, and so that's already two ifs, because I'm saying if price gets up there, and not two ifs, but I'm essentially guessing two different steps: the up, and then I'd enter the trade, and then the down. That's where I actually make money. So if I'm looking at ETH/USD, I'm looking at an up and a down on ETH/BTC, or a flat and a down, and then a up and a down on BTC/USD. So that's 4 ifs that I'm assuming. So I don't like trading AUDUSD pairs. It's a lot of thinking, and I'm a tactically lazy person. I try and avoid doing stuff that I don't have to do. And so Bitcoin/USD, easy. One chart, don't have to think too much. So Kalen, hopefully that answers what you're looking at on ETH. So for Jason Armfield, we'll go have a look at CRVUSD. So same thing, I'll chart the Bitcoin pair first. Now CRO is one that I love because it's been very, very good to me. So we've eaten that zone, so that's gone. That 4-hour level's still there. We actually ate that weekly zone too. Well, look at that. So even that, I would consider that's gone. That would be the next weekly level. It's super, it's huge. I don't like big zones like that, but that's all the information we've got to go off. And so it gets pretty wicky way back here because CRO had really low volume, back in these times. I've got a mate who told me about it early, and I was like, that's too good to be true. How do you get 2% back off the card? Like, where are they getting the money to pay people? I would love to know what his CRO balance is now. I feel like he would be sitting on a pretty fat stack, so good on him. But yeah, so that's the weekly. I mean, you can see that level held beautifully, right? We had that morning star off it. So that's currently my daily supply. That was 4 hour. Currently my daily supply. And there's a bit of a daily demand here. Again, it's a pause zone, so not something I think of as super strong, but good chance it'll hold. We'll get rid of that trend line. Don't need that anymore. So it's almost been, it's kind of ugly, but it's almost done like a descending wedge. Yeah, it sort of has. Descending wedge, come down, potentially picked up liquidity and then pushed off, but I don't love the look of it. So let's get rid of that. We've broken this high time frame trend, right? That daily trend line. And that, so our next trend line is a long way away, right? We could potentially fall, by the time we get over there, 40% to sort of meet that next trend line. Hopefully find some buying support. I don't think that's the most likely thing. So, in fact, you could even probably put that. Yeah, you could probably put that there. This whole area is pretty choppy. Right, let's get rid of those because I don't like either of them. Don't need the alert for that. So, current 4 hour level is there, which is based off this candle. So that's the current supply, and the current demand is down here. Now we did break market structure, which I like. So from this demand zone, we went and broke that level. We still haven't broken this level, which to me is sort of the one that's in control. But it's still a good sign. The fact that we broke through there, made a new higher high. I like the look of that. Is there anything else I'm thinking here? To be honest, I still lean towards down. I think the break of this big trend line, we've sort of pulled up in the middle of nowhere, right? There could be a 4-hour level from way back, you know, like we're up here in 2019. There could be a 4-hour level from way back that's held us up here, but that's sort of a nowhere region to bounce. We had that sort of descending wedge. So a descending wedge is a bullish pattern. We did have that, but it sort of faked out to the downside first. Now it's faked to the upside. So if anything, it's sort of a ranging market, which, like I said, not my area of expertise, right? I'm always looking for, I'm always looking for trending markets, and certainly breaks in market structure. I lean towards down before up. I lean towards that rather than go and break that. But we definitely could, right? You know, we might come down, bounce off the 50 fib, bounce off one of those 4-hour levels. I mean, I had about 10 in here before. That's sort of why I don't like it at the moment. It's just a bit messy. Just nothing really jumps out at me when I look at this. So yeah, I mean, we definitely could. We definitely could come down, bounce off that level and break that level. But I just don't see anything that I look at and go, yeah, I want to trade that. But I don't trade CRO. I do, I guess, invest. I wouldn't say that I really invest in. Sort of just accumulated a lot of it by accident, but yeah, that's how I am with CRO. So on the USD pair though, you can see. So I marked that off. That would have been on Monday, right? This supply zone, we've had a perfect rejection off that, and that's sort of 4-hour EQ. So that is, to me, that's probably more bearish than anything. Now, for us to reclaim some buying power, that's my daily demand zone down here. We're still within that daily trend, right? We've got a pretty solid bear hammer. Daily close would have been 7th. Yeah, so the daily close would have been 15 minutes ago, right? We're now on a candle. You just can't see the candle because the trend line's in the way. So that's a pretty solid bear hammer to be closing like that. Now, there would be, again, there'll be a demand zone here. Not super strong. It did break this high, but this is the real key level. This sort of area through here, that's the real key, because strong 4-hour EQ, you know, daily supply, until we break that level, I'm not going to be very bullish on CRVUSD. So, what do we got below us? So there's a demand zone there, which is sort of what held us up off that bounce. This wick has almost cleared that demand zone. And then we've got a demand zone through there. So, I don't love this. It doesn't have a whole lot of strength in terms of this zone. This zone here doesn't have a whole lot of strength, in my opinion. That zone there has been pierced, so also doesn't have a whole lot of strength. But between the two of them, they could hold. We're still within that. We've just had a daily bearish engulfing. Highest probability. I do. I lean towards us coming back to this daily level. So I'm talking like 35 cents. That's a huge drop. You know, you're talking like a 50% drop. What are we at? Yeah, so 40%. We're at 61 cents. And that, like, I don't think that's going to happen this week. That will take a little bit of time to sort of get there. But looking at this right now, looking at the daily close we had yesterday, I'm probably going to sell a little bit more of my CRO. With my CRO, I essentially set aside a chunk that I want to sell, and I dumped some at 88 cents, I think. So you're talking there. which is not too shabby at all, looking at that chart now. And so I've still got half of that. Not my entire CRO holdings, but I just sort of, I posted this in the crypto charts or crypto chat, one of the bullpen channels. CRO had done some pretty huge numbers, nearly 1,000%. Even if you think it's going to keep going, right? It was at the time we had all those partnerships. They just brought the Staples Center naming rights. They might have even bought the Staples Center. This is how little I pay attention to fundamentals, but I know they had something going with the Staples Center. Or it might even be a different stadium, one of the big American stadiums. People start seeing that and going, this thing's going to the moon. This thing's going at $10, right? And it could, but to me, that's the best time to start getting out. Let that hype carry it for a little bit, but then definitely start taking profit on some of what you've got. And so that was why I sold at 88 cents. I put in the Discord why I was targeting, I think I was targeting 85, 86, but I sort of just decided to watch it and see what happened. But I explained my reasoning there. I think it was based on fib extensions and a flagpole, but if you scroll back and have a look, that'll be in there. But yeah, so I think that other half of my bag, I think I'm probably going to dump it after this call, to be honest, right? If price keeps pumping, it's not actually, I shouldn't say the other half of my bag, the other half of what I decided to sell. If price keeps pumping, yeah, cool. I haven't made as much as I could have off that bag, but I've locked in pretty solid gains, even at 60 cents. And if price keeps coming down, I'd much rather miss, some upside than watch myself lose 40%. This is why I think my maths versus psychology video is probably one of my best in terms of ideas in it. I can't remember if I spoke about this idea, but it's something that I do think about a lot, is balancing the maths and the psychology. I sold out of pretty much all of my Bitcoin at 50k USD because I realized I'd be much happier watching Bitcoin go to 100k and me miss not all those gains, because I still have some Bitcoin, but miss a lot of those potential gains. I'd be much happier watching myself miss those gains than watching it go back to 20 and not realizing the gains in the first place. So you really do. You have to really factor in your psychology with trading. For me, like, trading is just a means to an end. It's just a way to free up my time. And so if I can lock in some gains at 60 cents and free up my time for, use that money to not have to work for a while, then I don't care if crypto.com goes to $10 tomorrow. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm going to be a bit like, oh, geez, wish I'd held a bit more, but I'm not going to be too upset, because I know the second that I sell that, I go, oh, I've just got this much more free time until I potentially have to go get a job, or, until I have to touch my trading account again to sustain my lifestyle. So, I am very big on balancing the amounts you can make in the market with your psychology, and taking profit makes me very happy, even if it's not, you're never going to catch the top, right? I mean, I am stoked with how close I came to the top there. I could have made an extra, what's that going to be? Can't even see. Could have made an extra 10%, even if I'd caught the very top of that next week, an extra 30%. I don't care at all, right? I'm ecstatic that I locked in what I locked in. So yeah, I'm a big believer in balancing that. Jason sold a fair chunk close to the top as well. That is fantastic. That's unreal. I'd love to hear that. So yeah, that's my thoughts on CRO. Am I bullish on it long term? Not really, because I don't care about fundamentals. My bias, yeah, my daily bias is bullish. It's probably due for a correction, and it's had a pretty solid correction. We've come down 50%, far out. So we've had a decent correction, but I still wouldn't be too concerned with CRO if we got back down here, right? Like, it's had a pretty parabolic run, and so okay, let me just clear some things up, right? So yeah, I can delete this stuff. This is not my actual trading chart. So if we're talking like investing, which is not something I really do, but if we were, in terms of the time frame, right, we're talking holding this stuff for months to years, or especially years. Okay, so fibs is no good to us. Oh, of course, because it's had exponential growth. But yeah, to see price come back down into here wouldn't really concern me, right? I'd be pretty bullish on CRO from 25 cents. It's been a strong weekly level. We're on the dailies. Been a strong daily level. I've got a feeling, yeah, I mean, previous weekly high, even, what's that? Probably like, yeah, 20 cents, but let's leave it there. Strong daily level, you know, lines up with that trend. I wouldn't be too concerned to see CRO down here, but I would much rather sell where we are and not have to watch my CRO take that 60% drop than to just sit in it, you know, hoping that it's going to keep going to $2 or wherever you think it might be heading. So yeah, that's my thoughts on CRO at the moment. Christopher Harkin, SRMUSD. Great stream, thank you. I really appreciate that. That is great to hear, SRMUSD, because sometimes I do feel like I'm just rambling to you guys and everyone's thinking, geez, what is this bloke talking about? So I do appreciate that feedback. All right. Wow, you'd wish you bought that first week, wouldn't you? 1600%. Okay. So this hasn't been around for super long, or at least hasn't been on Binance for a super long time. In fact, so what I'm looking at there is actually the sort of two zones. No, we'll leave it as is. And we've got a zone here. All right, interesting. So we've got daily zone right up here. Got a daily zone down here. Good rambles, thanks. Thanks. There's a bit of a, not a super strong zone, but there is definitely a zone through there, and that's what's holding us up at the moment by the look of that. Just, you know, really short term, that looks bullish, right? Big buyback, even though we came down here, there was still a solid wick. Let me zoom in so you guys can see what I'm talking about. And here, there's been a decent bull hammer. So, I shouldn't say it looks bullish, right? Because the market structure is actually bearish, but that's sort of a good sign for the bulls. You know, we might be seeing bulls stepping back in. There's actually a zone, there's two zones. Got a zone here, right, based on that, and then it's held there. I love to see that. I love to see the retest. Really, really makes me a fan of the zone when I get to see that. It sort of just confirms that there is strength there, whereas like a zone like this, I would expect it to act as a supply zone, but until it's sort of tested, you don't know for sure. Whereas that top one has been tested. Fantastic. I know it's got some strength. So there's probably a trend line we can chuck in too. Something like that. We're a long way from it, so probably not super relevant right now, but like I said, always like to have my big picture ideas. We've got a 4 hour zone there. So this is where my charts can start to get messy, right? Because I'm going to have about 5 zones within the same section. Okay. Fib. So we've really... So this hasn't bounced anywhere near as much as Bitcoin has, which is interesting because it's a USD pair. So I'm assuming SRM has been going down against Bitcoin at the same time. Oh, you want it on FTX? All right. SRM would be perv or yeah. All right, let's just start with the 4 hour because we've already looked at the rest. So that's that supply zone. We had that supply zone, and we had that. I don't think we had that demand zone, but I put a demand zone there. Not one I'd have a whole lot of faith in. Let's see if we can find anything from back over here. So there was a level there. That was a decent pivot. And that level there, pushed out there. Yep. What about any EQs? It's probably, oh, there's definitely a level there. Yep, I like to look at that. So we have a 4 hour level there. And actually, there we go. So there's also that level there. So you can see it's pierced it where it sort of hadn't managed to pierce it on Binance. It's pierced on the perp charts. Could be a liquidity thing. Could be just a difference in what the traders were seeing, the trade the two different pairs. Yeah, could be a few things. Nothing that I'd be too concerned about. So, to be honest, I don't like this. Right, it's had a pretty solid V recovery, so that's always good to see. But the fact that it's not recovering, you know, Bitcoin's up around here, somewhere around the 50. The fact it's not recovering as well as Bitcoin. So let's just look at SRM BTC. I'd say that's going. Oh, it's coming up as well. That's interesting. So why is SRMUSD not recovering that well? Did it just come a whole lot further down? No, we're on perp, aren't we? So perp. What's going on there? Or is that... Okay, so that's 15%. Not sure. Not really sure what's going on there. Bitcoin's back up here, which had a really strong bounce. It did go a whole lot further down than Bitcoin, so that's probably contributing to it too. But yeah, I do like the strength of this buyback, right? That's solid, that's sharp. It is always good to see like a V recovery, but market structure's hella bearish. That's a huge sell-off, pretty weak recovery. Even if we got up to there, sort of, wouldn't surprise me to see like a bear flag sort of thing forming. I lean towards, so high time frame, I lean towards the downside, just because of that sort of market structure. Yeah, so what makes the most sense for me here is a recovery, right? We had a huge sell-off, so I'd expect to see a recovery, even potentially to that. I'd really like to look at that level. In fact, that's probably a daily level. We're on the daily? Yeah, that's probably a daily level. Really like to look at that level. The daily supply is up here. So something like that is probably what I'm expecting to see. Yeah, again, probably shouldn't say expecting, but what I think is, you know, the more likely scenario. A bit of a recovery because, yeah, it's had a pretty huge sell-off. I wouldn't be taking... I mean, I just wouldn't trade it, being a USD pair, and especially SRM. I've never heard of it. That doesn't mean much. I haven't heard of 95% of the coins out there. But, you know, you could... If you're going long here, you're halfway through the move. Like, it's already moved 16%. If you try and get in on, like, the next higher low formation, if there is a higher low form, you'd want to be looking for, you know, support. Pretty weak level through there. I mean, well, not weak, but it's only held it twice in the time frame we're looking at. What have I done there? Let's get rid of this. So, and it's already been retested. Yeah, I'd be wanting to see. So there is actually a weak supply zone there. Once we break that, then you could potentially look for longs, and then, you know, be looking for longs up to... I'd be taking profit early, just because it seems super bearish to me. I'd be taking profit 50, 61.8. I wouldn't be holding it. I mean, I'd potentially hold some, but I'd definitely be locking in some profit early before we got up to those sort of levels. So that's what I'm seeing on SRM perp. That's an hour. I reckon we might wrap up there, guys. Yeah, let me know what you thought. If you got something out of this video, definitely let me know. If you got any recommendations for how it could be done better, I will try and figure out some way around that delay, because that's a little bit annoying. And I'd love to have you guys be able to actually, you know, get on and ask questions with your voice. And I know you can do that in Zoom, but Zoom has some issues as well that I'm not a huge fan of. So I'll try and figure out, you know, what is really the optimum way of doing this sort of stuff. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Hopefully it's something different to learn on your Wednesday morning. Let's go and check out Scalp, see what's happening. Still nothing happening here. So yeah, I'll keep an eye on it. You know, it might play out. If it does, I'll post it in the bullpen. If it gets stopped out, I will just pretend that we never spoke about it because that's the best way to trade. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and I will talk to you guys very soon.